Keep it short, Stefan.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
We don't need any.
Welcome to the College Lecture Series program sponsored by the Professional Development Committee. Thank you all for coming and supporting the program. Today we have Dr. Stuart Bartow reading and discussing his just published work, Einstein's Law, and his other works that he completed during his sabbatical and his writer's residency awarded by the Adirondack Center for Writing. Without further ado.
That's great, Sean, thank you. Wonderful. That's the best introduction. Okay, you're good.
Okay, as you can see, I came here very well prepared. This book was published, actually it was accepted for publication, I can't remember. It was last spring or summer, but the sabbatical enabled me to get the time to do everything you need to do after you get a book accepted for publication. I kind of wish some of my 180 students were here because this would be good for them to hear. And I asked them to come. We met today, 12:40 to 1:40, but I'm sure they had something much more educational to do. The shame of this, though, is that because they haven't published books yet. Maybe some of them will someday. It's the publishing industry, of course, is undergoing actually a good revolution, as far as I'm concerned, because you can print on demand now, which means thousands and thousands of books aren't getting thrown in the dumpster after they've been in print for a few months. And many more authors are able to be published, and small presses can flourish without going broke. These are all good things. The bad thing maybe is there's so much being published that maybe certain really good works don't get recognized early on. But when has that ever happened anyway? That's always been a problem anyway. So, but the point here with the sabbatical is it enabled me to find the time to proofread, to do all the editing stuff, and all the stuff that enabled me to get this, published while I was on sabbatical. And it also, it's funny, I didn't really notice it was happening, but I was getting a lot of writing done while on sabbatical, and I thought, well, when it was over, I thought, well, I don't know if I did that much. And then all of a sudden I started teaching again and stopped writing and realized, oh, I guess I did get a lot more done than I would have gotten done had I not been on sabbatical. So, but I think the best part of sabbatical is that it restored me. I really feel like energized again, which is very good, very important. I think colleges should take these things much more seriously. The students will benefit greatly, I believe, from them, but anyway. So this is my book, Einstein's Law, and part of the things that inspired it, I don't know when my interest in astronomy and astrophysics began. I think it was probably when I was a kid watching B science fiction movies. And then later, over time, I kept reading books on astronomy, and I'm in the Salem Astronomy Society, and I actually took an open university course on astronomy, and I got a B+, so I did okay. I didn't get everything right when I took the final. There's some things I couldn't remember, but anyway, I find it fascinating. And just recently, with gravitational waves, they've discovered that Einstein's theory on gravitational waves that was back in 1915 has proven true, which seems to keep happening with Albert Einstein. All these theoretical things keep being proven to be demonstrated to be true. And I haven't heard real good explanations as to why gravitational waves are important, but this is why I think they're important. And then I'll get to reading Einstein's Law and Proofs. If you were an ornithologist and you could only see birds, and all of a sudden something happened where you could hear them, it would change the entire way you experience birds. And I think that's what's going to happen with gravitational waves, is that now we can hear the universe, not just see stars and see galaxies, and all that sort of thing. So anyway, that's the pretty much extent of my knowledge of astrophysics, so we'll go on to Einstein's law. I think I'll read Einstein's compass. I have a lot of different Einstein poems in here. They're not all Einstein poems, but let's see. 36. I read Walter Isaacson's biography of Einstein, which was magnificent, if any of you ever get a chance. We have it here at the library, books on tape, if you want to listen to it while you're driving around. It's really wonderful. Einstein, apparently when he was about 4 or 5, was given a gift as a compass, and a compass for a gift. I think this is where it begins with him. Mesmerized by the mystery of a compass, the 4-year-old, ill and bedridden, lay wondering as the strange disc, with its arms pointed nervously like a live thing. This talisman gave proof of powers that worked outside of human will, indicating divine handiwork, a creator who made energy fields invisible, but real. This was the gift that began his lifelong quest to pick the cosmic lock. The compass pointing north on his chest, the universe itself a palimpsest, concealing a code he believed elegant and simple. Centuries before Newton's gravity, Dante defined love as the energy that held the universe together. And intuition, Albert would have no quarrel with. Playing the violin, he traversed the fields, perhaps with compass in his pocket, his head turned toward earth as the night sky reached toward its own spinning compass, until he reached those billions on the head of a pin, the quantum guarding Eden, the Leviathan, the meridian no mind can cross. I'm having trouble seeing. Can we maybe move something here?
To be able to move those lights and move them.
All right.
You have a long stick.
Oh. What I can do though, let's see, maybe I'll read another Einstein. This one's called Einstein's Homework. Let me find Einstein's Homework. Einstein, when he was living in Princeton, a little girl down the street was coming over to his house after school and getting help with her math homework. Her parents didn't know about this. They were mortified when they found out. But this is really true. I don't remember her last name. I don't think I wrote it down. Her name was Adelaide. And she even started bringing a friend over. And he started feeding them. It's very funny. He was a lovely, charming person. Einstein's homework wasn't Einstein's, but an 8-year-old girl who took to him in Princeton. She'd visit after school unknown by her parents, and Albert would help with her homework. Imagine Bach for music too, Michelangelo for art, Darwin for science, or Dickinson for poetry. I knock on Emily's door. She sees me from her upstairs window. Though her feet are soundless, I can hear her white dress rustle as she descends the stairs, opens the door, just wide enough for a skinny boy. The house is fragrant with baking. At a wooden table, we read Keats. Her eyes frighten me at first, but eventually I adjust. She even shyer than I am. After school, baseball season over, what she really teaches is that my own weird way of seeing things is okay, that poems make a kind of sense of their own, and if you can feel that, you know how divine beings might see this world. This actually is a little deviation from Einstein. This is called Better Ghosts. Barbara Unger, my partner, and I, we were watching several years ago. We like to watch old movies, and we were watching The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. I don't know if any of you guys remember that movie. 1947. Gene Tierney, Rex Harrison. And the funny thing about it was that had both remembered the ending wrong, but we remembered it the same way. Isn't that, what it shows is we should have written the ending to that movie, and we would have made it a better movie, but we weren't around at the time to do so. So anyway. It's called Better Ghosts. I don't know, do all you guys know the plot? Maybe some of you don't. For a few of you who don't know the plot, this widow, she's a young widow, gets a house probably, in Cornwall, on the coast of England, and it's haunted by a ghost of a sea captain. They fall in love with each other, but he's a ghost. That causes a problem, of course. Anyway. On the couch, in the dark, we're watching The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. We've waited patiently through this old black and white for an ending that doesn't exist, except in how we remember the end. That must exist somewhere. A scene we each fabricated from a universe of possibilities. When Lucy or Lucia, in her dream chair, drops her glass, she emerges young from the cocoon of her body. The sea captain returns, the ghost she fell for, who left her so she might live among the living. She failed, of course. But now they're supposed to drift out onto the widow's hall, past the telescope, linger a moment with the cruising seagulls. Instead, they walk down the stairs and out the front door. We sit and stare, amazed that in different lives we imagine the same ending. We'd never bother with stairs and doors, but float right onto the widow's walk, over the cliffs to the sea. That would have been way better. Actually, we'll go to this Buster Keaton, old movies, I really like old movies. Buster Keaton, silent film star, some of you guys probably know about him. Really worth seeing some of these old silent film stars. He's called Ode to Buster Keaton. Hat too flat for anyone's head, chain smoker, lover of toy trains, laconic and elegant, a man of empty pockets, Olympian always hurtling desperately after a caboose or car, or chased by police, or a girlfriend's raging father. He's got her soaked again by some blunder involving boats or bathtubs, cascading himself out from flimsy buildings and into seas, lakes, ponds, fountains, and alien in a world run by bullies and generals. Sprinting out the dream factory's yard, the frame that holds dimension captive, but never busted, our bashful hero, our acrobat of infinite trouble. Let me try Einstein's desk. You can actually look up on the, Google it up, just Google Einstein's desk, and it'll come right up. There's a picture of his desk that was taken in 1955, the day he died. And it made me feel better about things. Einstein's desk, a mess after all. The wild dance of stars, atoms, appears the cosmos without sense. The sloppy signature of all things uplifts Albert refused to cast a chance. Like Bohr's and Einstein, my grandfathers were opposites, but for religion, which neither cared about. One a hatter, tinker, jack of all trades. The other, bird sanctuary warden all his life. One seller, a spiral of tools, wires, broken machines, defunct radios. The other, a perfectly ordered domain, everything categorized and placed.
What can be said about the two approaches to chaos that looms to overtake us? The swirling passions of my life perhaps led me to study stars and nebulae, where an order dwells outside the clutter of the world. Alas, the panic of my desk, like Einstein's, books, notes, papers, and piles. Let there be lost equations and a mess of unfinished poems amidst the madness that makes figures in the mist appear and vanish in the random wind and rain. And another part, I always do this, forget this next page. It's such a trouble, you need it on both things. A disordered desk doesn't hide the key to a unified field. A neat desk is no means to a perfect poem. Still, we can stroll outside when it's clear, find the twins, the bears, the Pleiades, like equations abandoned to uncertainty, and that faint blur, Andromeda, almost lost to sight, hiding stars, the galaxy you find while searching for something else. You guys have any questions on anything? I don't mind if there's, need to wait till I'm done with this. If there's anything. Yeah, Laura.
I have a question about this paper.
Einstein's
So,
desk?
Lawn.
Oh, it's Laura.
No, of the book.
Oh,
So why lawn?
well, I'll read Einstein's law and maybe you'll see that. Actually, I got the idea from an Italo Calvino short story, and I quoted him here. Yes. Yes, Italo Calvino. A lawn does not have precise boundaries. And, that's like the universe. It doesn't have precise boundaries, And I also read a quote in a book called Universe and Dr. Einstein that I would really recommend to anyone who wants to try to, if you want to get a lay knowledge of the way Einstein saw things, it's a really good book. It's short and very readable. And I can't quote it exactly, but the author said something like, Isaac Newton taught us that the universe is very orderly, just like our own backyard. And Einstein taught us that our backyards are completely disorderly, and the universe, something of that sort, something like that. But I've always liked, the idea of gravity to me is really interesting because it's so bizarre, and it's Newton who came up, I guess, with the concept of gravity. But it's just energy. And what is that energy? Like I said in one of the other poems, it's what Dante called love. It's what those things together. So you can see things that way, and I think Einstein did. Anyway, a lawn does not have precise boundaries. Einstein's lawn is wild, like his here, infinite within finite space, like the universe. The blades of grass, their exact number, merely estimates, like estimates of stars. 300 sextillion, last I heard. The calculations always relative, in flux, theoretical, the lawn's edges non-existent, as the cosmos without edges. What is seen as lawn and not lawn, weeds within lawn, lawn within weeds, without edges, always threatening to expand, dandelions, white dwarfs, wormholes, aliens, bumblebees, beetles, ant colonies, then all the hidden stuff, bacteria, subatomic particles, spores, quarks, dark energy, pulsars, comets, a cluster of moles disrupting the lawn's contours, an inexact surface moving in waves, sometimes the wind, the moles disturbing space-time curvature, each and every blade of grass pushing toward the nearest star in defiance of gravity, like Einstein's here. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Good answer.
Yeah, thanks. It's kind of like a setup. I should give you a couple hours. Okay. it's really, you know, I sometimes wish our students would think about these things more. You know, it's really a lot of work sometimes to just get up to try to imagine stuff that, at least for me, it just fascinates me. And one of the things I like about teaching literature and writing courses, even basic, you know, like 101, is your subject matter is everything. You know, that's the grand thing about it. And, you know, and it gets political in a way because of, everything's political, you know, but like when I try to explain, you know, like things like, and I'm not teaching astronomy, of course, but somehow it'll come up and I'll say, well, you know, they say there are like 170 billion galaxies, that's the estimate now, right? 170 billion galaxies, just to try to get them to try to expand a little, you know. And I guess maybe for me, the subject matter in this book, it's stuff that fascinates me. And so how do you work through that problem of here we are in this tiny little place, but nevertheless, it all matters. Everything matters somehow. And you know, one of the things that sort of, I won't say console would be the wrong term, but I believe it in one of Chet Ramos' astronomy books, perhaps. You know, the question, where is the center of the universe? And I think it's answered by astrophysicists. I think the answer is it's everywhere in the universe. So, how can that be? You know, there's got to be.
I thought it was just Lawrence Falls myself.
Actually, it's Pilot Knob. That's what I read in the last astronomy. And I've been meaning to get over it because I see what it's like in the center. Things keep shifting and I can't get there. I only like to write about myself peripherally because I think it's the only way I can write about myself effectively. So, also I have so much to hide. Definitely have. This is called Hades. And this is actually a real experience. I'd been in the Peace Corps for 2 years in the Fiji Islands. I was in my 20s. And I came back for about a month visit. And I was going to go back again for another year. And it was, I ended up in Grand Central Station in New York City, which is magnificent. At about 7 in the morning, or 8 in the morning. And I was going out, because I was wanting to catch a train into upstate New York and across into Connecticut. And in the meantime, all these commuters were coming in. And it was so weird. I mean, I've been in South Pacific. I've been barefoot for 2 years, you know. And all these guys come in, all with the same kind of suits on, all with the same briefcases. I didn't think such a thing existed, you know. It was weirder than I was when I was in the Fiji Islands. And so it was just very odd. So I ended up writing a poem about it called Hades. Not 20 years absent, but 2, kind of relating it to, you know, Odysseus or Aeneas, any of those adventurers. Not 20 years absent, but 2, returned from far islands, I descended into the caverns of Grand Central Station. I had no sword, no ram to sacrifice, no sprig of holly, no golden bough. Only a beaten typewriter a junkie stole when I wasn't watching. 8, Monday in December's day. All were coming in. No one seemed to be leaving but me. I lived barefoot in a place where even men held hands and women sang each to each instead of talking. So was not prepared for such an army. Black suits, black coats, briefcases, faceless clones, all at the same pace, poured out the train doors. I thought such breeds of men escaped, a vanished race. But I was 25, still young, and only recently have realized so were they. They probably won't see it. obviously I didn't follow the pathway. How are we doing on time here, John? I don't want to cut it too short.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay. I'll read a couple more poems, and then maybe you do take some time for questions or anything you guys want to talk about. It's okay with me. I have another sort of astrophysics poem, Absolute Zero. Absolute Zero apparently is theoretical. It doesn't really exist in the universe, I believe, as far as I know. It would be, I give all the figures here, but it would be 459 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, the Kelvin and such. And I kind of compare it to, the reason physicists like absolute zero is if you can get close to that cold, you can get atoms to slow down electrons, you can study them. One must have a mathematical mind to know the mind of winter. I'm stealing from Stevens here. One must have a mathematical mind, because one must have a mind of winter, I believe, he's snowman. One must have a mathematical mind to know the mind of winter, unlike the children who fashioned the figure, paralyzed and grinning behind the snowbound church. Instead, beneath the frost line, they've built a collider to learn whether the God particle exists. Absolute zero is theoretical. Nowhere in the universe is it that cold. The snowman is spinning, but we think he's still. If scientists with more and more cold could slow him down to just below light's flash, might they glimpse the atomic lineaments of the snowman's face beneath the snow? And I think they found the God particle. Didn't they?
It's awesome.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to have made much of a difference as far as I can. Maybe it takes a while for these things to matter. Maybe I'll. I've read this poem before. I think it's a pretty good one. I don't know if any of you remember, maybe you remember, or one of you guys remember, there's a term for using the title of the poem as the first line of the poem. Do you guys remember that term? There is such a term, and I can't remember the name. I should Google it. So this is the title, this is also the snake that has the first word. Without birds, the sky would not exist, is what I tell the college class I'm visiting to discuss my book of poems that has so many birds inside. They look blankly back at me, not because they're foolish, but shy. Despite what so many think, though they are tattooed or flip-flopped, wear fake tans, they are intelligent and kind. The world has made them wary, passive, and they know not to trust poets. Immediately, I prove to be a weirdo by turning out the lights and raising the blinds. I talk about sympathetic fallacy and cosmic complicity, but of course, the windows are sealed shut. As I know, we too are caged. The skyline is empty of birds this spring afternoon. Yet I read poems of flight. How I love the fact that nature will not bend to our will. Or perhaps it does, always. But all that invisible force, like dark matter, dark energy, constantly competes, creates a kind of balance, a gravity of wills which the sparrows, who now I see careening toward a far cupola, care nothing about. Maybe I'll close. I didn't really read that many. I just read poems from this book. I kind of forgot what it was. But I'll probably do this again sometime. This is called Einstein's Demon. I'm trying to remember Einstein's friend from Princeton. I can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me maybe. Heiss something. Anyway, he was quoted as saying the quantum is Einstein's demon. How do I explain this? It's the most complicated physics. Einstein helped develop the quantum theory, but he felt it was incomplete. Most physicists nowadays consider it complete, even though it doesn't really make sense. The fact that it didn't make sense drove Einstein crazy. What doesn't make sense is this. Subatomic particles exist only in possibility until someone views them, okay? I, of course, have the solution for the problem, but I could run and show you right now. I think it's because of multiverses. So everything is actually happening. And that's why, of course, you have to prove that mathematically and through experiments. So this quote by me means nothing. This really bothered Einstein. That either something exists or it doesn't. That was the whole idea behind the experiment with Schrodinger's cat. Either it's dead or it's alive. It can't be one or the other, right? Anyway, this was Einstein's demon, quantum was Einstein. And we even, I think, have a book in our library called, I think it's called Quantum, which is a book about the whole problem between his argument with those guys, led by Heisenberg and Niels Bohr and his friends. He was in the minority of this. And so far, he's still, he worked all of the last half of his life to solve this problem. It's interesting. So, I think I'll close with this one. Einstein's demon was the quantum. Spooked him for decades. The tree that falls in the forest with no one there makes a sound, Einstein. What if the ant colony alive in the tree, the birds, the raven? What do aliens hear? Science seeks again and again, keeps proving the quantum, reality's foundation, vanishing into uncertainty. This made Einstein crazy. Knew he was wrong. The trees crash real. And when a cloud bank obscures the moon, does the moon disappear? Don't most things on Earth go unseen? The mist that rises on the pond before anyone wakes, the owls bark when no one hears. We know the answer. The birds, the forest breathes whether we are there or not. As for the micro world of uncertainty, where first things exist only in theory, one thing must always happen. So here we are, in every moment, moments like quantum, inside the one that happens, all the other possibilities occurring in a sphere and elsewhere we cannot see or hear. And I guess because Terry's here, I should
Thank you. Thank you.
This is for you, Terry. I was going to quit right now.
Yeah, this is the one I was going to read before I couldn't find. This is fugue. I don't know if you've heard of the fugue state, where you just sort of forget where you are, which happens to me constantly. I don't see any big deal at all. But apparently it's a real problem for some people. They forget long time where they are. And I love the name of it. It's fugue state. It's very strange. I call this fugue. When no one is watching, we stroll out the back door, but find the backyard is terra incognita. So we go meandering down unfamiliar streets, looking for places we know, on an argosy in quest of the storied hoard of memory. We are doomed because all we value has vanished into a realm we cannot reach. We hope we are on a subway, racing back in time because everything is coursing in a direction our minds won't take. In search of us, people scour the city. We believe they are enemies of the heart, and we are stranded in a future we don't wish to live in. We are like the soulful elephants in that Tarzan movie, lumbering inexorably to the secret graveyard no human has ever reached. And, that's from the 1932 There's this great scene of all these elephants. That's the plot. There's this elephant graveyard that these poachers, these evil men. You know, Tarzan's, you know, one of the early environmentalists. You know, if you think about Tarzan and Jane, everybody talks about that. Maybe that should be a poem, Tarzan and Jane, as early original environmentalists. You've been warned. Do you guys have questions? Because I don't need to see now, so I can use this. Yep.
This is a question of craft. I
Oh,
know-
yeah, sure, Marty.
The book is divided, I believe, into 4 sections.
Yes, it
maybe
is.
more.
Yep.
Now, did you devise the sections before you actually wrote the poem?
No.
Or you wrote all the poems and you said, aha, you know, these fit nicely into 4 sections?
It is such a tricky thing. It is such a difficult thing. Yeah, I had all the poems, and you sort of intuitively feel, okay, this is done, you know? And one of the nice things, it took me several years to get this book published. And that's a good thing, because I hadn't written Einstein's Desk yet, and it fits in the book perfectly, you know. Most of the other poems were already there. I think it's worth waiting an extra 3 years to get another poem to put in that will make it be better. What the hell, there's no race going on, except, well, you know, I mean, you know, you're running out of time all the time, but, you know, what I did was when they were all finished, when I felt that I had the whole book-length manuscript, I knew that it had to be divided in sections to make it more reasonable, and I felt that it was organically sort of like that anyway. And so what I did was I began with 4 piles, or with all the poems and beginning with 4 sections, and then putting each poem like a deck of cards almost. That okay, this one seems like it should go here, and this one seems like it should go there. But I think there's a certain amount of randomness involved in that too, you know. I think if I took one poem and moved it from section 1 into section 4 or whatever, I don't know how much it would matter. But I think it would in some way. Ultimately, it would matter. If I did it too often and scrambled it too much. But I felt thematically there were certain differences in tone and theme. And also, though, you want those differences within each section too, though. You know, you don't want it all kind of flat. So I thought I would kind of, one of the things that helped is I have 6 Einstein's poems in there. There's Einstein's car, Einstein's lawn, Einstein's compass, Einstein's homework, Einstein's demon. I don't know, there's another one. But that really helped me because I didn't want all 6 of those in one section, which I could have done, but I thought it would be more interesting to scatter the Einstein poems throughout the text with other scattered kind of astrophysics poems or, you know, sort of whatever kind of speculative poems are in here. A lot of these are sort of speculative, you know, about integrating these very, very beautiful and strange ideas about the universe with daily life, you know. I think that's what the book is about, in a way. It's the old, you know, it's in Emerson's essay, Nature, he talks about how if the stars only came out once a year, one night a year, that would be like the biggest event of the year, right? Everybody'd be outside that night, or anybody would. There'd be some people who wouldn't, actually. You know? Some people are just hopeless. I really, you know, you can't bring everyone along for the ride. You know, here's a teaching. You know. And you know, and little kids know this, you know? Like every day should be like that. Of course, should be walking around. Should be looking at the walls, I guess. But there should be some element of that in our lives every day, I think. And that's why poetry is great, you know? Because that reminds us that that's how it should be, you know? I don't know if there was a lot of randomness involved
these sections. So I kind of had to go by instinct. But if you get one, you know, like a novel needs chapters and such, unless you're James Joyce or somebody, you don't need anything. But,
Yes, Stu, I don't know how many people have read, but why don't you read sections to them? And they can
the
fit in
section
the-
titles?
The tie, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, good idea. What did I call them? Oh, yeah, okay. Section 1 is Einstein's car. He didn't have a car, by the way. He didn't drive. You know how to drive. You know, all he could do is find his way home half the time, I think. Well, yeah, he did. He always made it back. The second section is Piccolomini's Book of Stars. And in that poem I talk about the ancient, medieval, and actually Renaissance artists. Back then you didn't have to, if you were an astronomer, you could be an artist simultaneously. And you could illustrate your books. And Piccolomini's Book of Stars is beautiful. I actually saw it at the Skidmore. Was it at the Tate? What's that place called? Not the Tate.
Tank.
The Tank. The Tank. The Tate's in London. Yeah. The Tank. About 10, 15 years ago, I saw that book there. Always stuck in my mind. It's gorgeous. It's simple. Okay, so first section, Einstein's car. Second, Piccolomini's Book of Stars. Third section, Labyrinths. And fourth section is Einstein's Demons. So I come back to Einstein in the title. The first and the fourth. But that's that is a little difficult to answer because you just go by. I looked at it when it was all done, Marty. When I'd done that, and said, I think this works. This is real. That's really effective more than
So
anything.
ultimately, it was intuitive, right?
Like many things. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Joyce, did you have?
Yes. This is more of like a general inspiration question.
Yep.
What do you hope to accomplish when you set out to write a poem? And kind of related to that is, how do you know when you're done?
Oh, what do I hope to accomplish? Well, I know when it's done when I can't make it any better. That I know when it's done when all I'm doing is just changing it. So the best thing to do is maybe, because usually when you write it, at first you think it's a masterpiece, and then you look at it the next day and it's starting to diminish a little, and then the next day it's diminishing more, So the best thing to do is put it away for a while. One of the nice things about getting older is there's less pressure. Like, I don't have to get a book out. It's too late to be junkies, So why not take 10 years? I haven't been doing that really, but why not? The first part of your question again was
What inspires you to write a poem? What's your motivation in
Oh.
creating one?
Oh, well, what I try to do constantly is quit writing poetry. And so that what happens then is when I get an idea or when the muse comes for a visit or however you want to put it, that I feel a compulsion to do it. Otherwise, why do it? Why do it? It's a nuisance, really, I mean, in many ways. But it's fun to write poems. That's why you do it. But you don't have to. So unless something happens that makes that compulsion occur, then I'm not going to do it. So I never know whether, I could write a poem every day, but why do that? But if I get the compulsion, and then usually I'll get something will happen usually. And either I'll be able to draft it right out, right there. I might have to rewrite it 10 or 20 times, eventually get it right. But it's just a compulsion. I'm not setting out to do anything. If that happens, Charles Bukowski, very controversial poet and writer, but I think his tombstone, the epitaph reads, "Don't try." And he didn't try to do much either, And I think that's, at least for me, that's good. It works because stop it, quit, don't do it. Of course, I think a lot of people decide to be poets because you can just sit around in cafes or in bars and just say, hey, I'm a poet. have to do anything, you know, I think forcing, it just doesn't work, you know? And I would have expected it's the same with other people who work in other art forms, you know?
Is the compulsion that you mentioned an idea?
Yeah, you could call it that, yeah. I get a feeling, an idea, so.
What's an example of an idea?
Well, for instance, when the line came to me, without birds the sky would not exist. That's an idea. And so you just turn things upside down in a way. And what's an idea? Oh, okay, like with Einstein's demon, for instance. The idea that things don't exist until there's an observer. And that's the old philosophical question. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, does it make a sound? And of course, Einstein would believe, yes, of course it makes a sound. But Heisenberg would not, I guess, right? I guess. So that was an idea. So I thought, well, wait a minute. The ants in the colony at the base of the tree, if you start acknowledging other forms of consciousness, then it changes your whole idea of what reality can be. So that's an idea.
Did you use the word palimpsest twice?
Yeah, I may have. I know I used it at least once. Like the universe is a palimpsest. I don't even know if I pronounce it right. It's not a word.
Palimpsest.
Yeah, palimpsest. Yeah, it's the romantics in British poetry like to use that term. That the reality is a veil, a palimpsest, and if you keep pulling the veil, you see there's more to see.
That's a metaphor that's used for science too.
Is it?
Yeah, Isis was the Egyptian goddess of science, or of nature.
Okay.
And on her temple in Egypt is inscribed, no more, I am all that is, and all that will be, and all that was, and no mortal has pulled the veil from before my face.
It's no wonder Shelley and the Romantics like that Egyptian stuff, I guess. I think you have a poem there, Bob. You have to sign that. That's the stuff of poetry. Well,
When you wrote the Grand Central Station poem, did you think about Ezra Pound's station
No.
in the Metro?
no, I didn't. I was thinking, but later I admire that poem because it's the first great haiku in English.
Yeah.
Really. It's too bad he was such an asshole. He had potential, But anyway.
So your imagery was very different. And
Oh yeah,
your
it's all
impression was
flowers.
very different, but still there were some similarities. And
Well, the movement, I suppose. Yeah, I was actually thinking of the Aeneid when Aeneas has to go to the underworld with the golden bow what's he got to find out? I think he's got to find out the way to Italy or something, right? You got to find some. Yeah, it's been a while since I think that's the information he needs. They don't know which way to go. Yeah.
so you didn't
Thank
think of
you.
whittling that down to 2 lines?
I'll try it. I'll let you know what happens, okay?
Try.
Yeah, I'll let you know. If I can remember, I'll see what I can do and give you a 2-line.
So how long after that happened did you write that poem?
It happened in December 1976. But this is 40 years later, okay, or almost 40 years later. Yeah, I'm really much older.
So you didn't write any draft of that right away?
No. It came to me a few years ago. And I wrote it a few years ago. Sometimes I'm a little distressed about the way stuff goes. Because, there's certain experience I've had that I think would make great poetry, but it just doesn't happen. It has to somehow kind of present itself. It just comes. And if they don't, I tried it the other way and it doesn't work. The poem comes out not good. I won't say poorly, but it's just flat. It doesn't work. they're stillborn, just maybe use that image. I found that the stuff works well if I just leave it alone and let it get in a space where it just kind of happens. I've tried the other way, it doesn't work. And it's also no fun the other way. And if it's no fun, why, like I said, why do it? You know, it's not like people are clamoring you know, for your next book, or you know, which it should be, of course. So, you know, if it doesn't give you joy, there's no sense in doing it. Yeah, Joyce?
So when you do a poem and you want to set it aside for a while, like even for months or years, how do you find it again? Like, do you write everything in a notebook sequentially, or do you like stuff it by theme and folders, or files?
Want me to reread Einstein's Desk? Would you like me to?
Okay, just intuitive then.
I lose stuff. Stuff's in drawers. Sometimes I write stuff in books and put them in my bookshelf, and I'll sometimes look at that book again because maybe there's a poem or something in there that I want, and I go, oh, yeah, I wrote. That's my handwriting. But I don't mean to sound cavalier about it because now and then if I write something, a rough draft that I think is really something there, I'll put it right on the keyboard. And so that when I get up in the morning or wherever I'm going, so when I come back, there it is. Or I'll put it right on the seat. So I sit on the damn thing and miss it. If I have a sense that it's really something important. Yeah, Kath.
I'm just enjoying the book, and I'm wondering if doing the poems that had to do with Einstein changed your understanding of Einstein at all. Because I'm seeing Einstein sort of treated as a myth. I mean, kind of making him a mythic hero. So we only know him by his artifacts.
Yeah, well, that's why if you look at like Einstein's car, which I didn't read, but like Einstein's home, you know, there's little anecdotes in the poems about him being a human being.
Yeah.
And he was all too human. It was really weird when I read Walter Isaacson's biography about his sex life. I just never thought of Einstein as a sexual guy. And he was very much so. And he had some troubling relationships. His first wife, I think there were problems with mental illness. There were all kinds of issues.
Even with his children.
Pardon me?
Even with his children.
Yeah, he had difficulties with kids. You know, he just like everybody else, he had problems. But he also had a great joy for life. And I think ultimately he was just this very sweet man, very good person. But part of it is, you know, I think part of the mythos of Einstein is this screwy genius who really couldn't relate well in the world, which is not really true. He had friends, he had great, you know, I mean, he was eccentric. But one of the best Einstein stories, which is in the biography, was in the early 30s. I think it was City Lights was the movie. Charlie Chaplin, who he loved. How could he not love Charlie Chaplin? You know, they were both tiny, you know, little guys, really. The movie's premiere, Einstein was visiting in the U.S. I don't remember which city, whether it was New York or L.A. They were both standing outside the movie theater, and there was a huge crowd cheering and cheering for the two of them. And Charlie Chaplin said to Einstein, "Everybody's cheering for me because everybody understands me. And everybody's cheering for you because nobody understands me." Yeah, that's a good one. It was also one that George Bernard Shaw made, and I don't know if I can remember exactly. The Ptolemaic universe lasted for 3,000 years. The Copernican universe lasted for 500 years. Newton's universe lasted for 200 years. And Dr. Einstein, how long do you think your universe is going to last? You know, something like that. So we completely changed our picture of the universe. Our picture of the universe is what Einstein is of Earth. I mean, in the general picture. Specifics are being worked out, but, you know. sure we didn't have any physicists come here and dispute me. It keeps me safe, I guess. Javon, yeah.
Yeah, one more.
Sure.
Just quickly, since, as far as the writer's residency is concerned, how helpful was that in the creative process?
You know, I have to tell you about that. I did the residency for several reasons. One is the director, Natalie Phil, said, "Are you going to apply?" And I thought, well, it's time for me to do a sabbatical, so I should apply. So lo and behold, I got accepted with 5 other people, and it was for 2 weeks. And, you know, my house where I live, it's this little house in the village of Salem. It's already like I have a writer's residency there, you know, it's just me and the cats. You know, it's a perfect little place for a writer. And so I did. But so as soon as I got to the residency, I immediately got homesick and started missing certain people, missing my cat, but I made 5 new good friends there, the other residents there, and I wrote a lot. I've been writing a lot of haiku, and because that actually is I constantly get ideas for haiku, unlike more conventional poems like these, which just come who knows when, you know, almost on a daily basis. So I love haiku because it's a way of engaging poetically with the world, really on a quotidian, daily basis. I don't think haiku read that well like conventional poems do. Maybe I should have brought a few. I mean, I've got some memorized. Repairing the halo around the streetlight, a flurry of moths. Inside the old barn, afternoon stars. You know, images like that. Anyway, so I read a book of translations of Issa's poems, and I had a little project in which I decided that I would write haiku in response to Issa's poems. And so I wrote about 55 of them, so it was very productive. I thought it was nothing, but then like I asked, you know, Barb, my partner, Barb, she said, "What, are you kidding? 55 haiku, that's a lot." You know? I also read Stephen Mitchell's translation of the Iliad, which is a beautiful translation. It's controversial. It's almost more like a version, I guess, than a translation. Because I teach, you know, world lit, and so I wanted to read that translation. It's hard to find the time to read tomes like that. So I was able to read that in the 2 weeks I was there, and decided that I would use that in my world lit course when I teach it again. Of course, not the whole thing. That would be my course to the I get the students to read 1,000 pages of Homer, I don't know, you know. So I did that, and I read a couple other books of poems, and it was a good experience for me, and I think I didn't realize that it would be a good experience for me until I did it. It's like taking a foreign language course. You know, students don't want to ever do it, but until they learn a foreign language, then they realize, oh, this was a good idea. You know, if that happens anymore these days, I don't know, I assume it still does. So did I answer your question, Julie?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, it was funny. It was strange because I'd never done a residency before, and I'm not used to being away from home for more than a week. I go away a lot, but I never go away a long time. And I have cat daughters, and the neighbor feeds the cats, and usually, you know, I keep gardening, and if you're going a long time, you know, all that goes to hell. And especially I get nervous in the winter, because if you're away from your house in the winter, things, pipes can freeze, things can, you know, it's like, you know, captain of a little ship or something. But this was in October, and I made 5 great friends. I mean, I really love the people that I was with. We all got along good. How strange, you know. But yeah, We've done just fine. And they feed you. That's something I didn't realize, how much of your time is occupied by getting food or cooking food or going somewhere to get it. If you're being fed, you can get a lot done. You know? I think you guys probably don't. I mean, it's more of a maybe revelation for a male who's been brought up in a kind of a more traditional kind of Irish Scottish family where, you know, over time I've really, you know, so that was lovely. Someone was always there making food for us. You know, not always, but usually there were leftovers. So we can, you know, on occasions. Here I'm talking about food. I did writer's residency. We talk about eating. You know? But it's really, you know. But I went out for a hike every day to clear my head, you know, which I do as much as I can here. I think you can write better if you're healthy. I know there's a lot of people, great writers who have not been and still manage to write, like Flannery O'Connor, for instance. But I think it's, you know, it's good to take care of yourself too.
Were you gone for a month?
It was 2 weeks, Kathy. 2 weeks, yeah. It was in the middle of October, 10th to the 24th it was. And the second day I was there, it snowed, you know. It was in the Adirondacks, you know, it was but it was lovely. Because, the time of year they have it, you know, means, you know, you have to, you know, have a sabbatical at that time. I don't think any of us are going to take 2 weeks off. Too dedicated to do that, but I think it ended up useful and helpful. I doubt that I'll ever do it. Of course, I say things like that, and then I do it again. So, are we good? Are we all set? Thanks, everybody. It was really nice. It was fun. Thank you.